My name is Martha Langston. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in a simple little house in South Los Angeles, and maybe you see me as just another old American woman with a headscarf and slow steps. But let me ask you something. Would you entrust your entire life, your money, your home, your name, to your own child? Well, I trusted. For years, I thought I was doing the right thing. I worked as a maid in mansions where no one knew my name. I washed the rich man's bathroom so I could pay for Aaron's school uniform, my only son. I gave everything I could, and then some. And do you know what my mistake was? To think that a mother's love comes with a guarantee of respect. I know there are a lot of women out there who feel the same lump in their throat when they ask, "How can you?" I gave it my all, and yet they left me behind? Today, I'm going to tell you what happened to me. How a child I fathered inside me had the courage to steal every penny from my account, cross the ocean with his wife and mother-in-law, and leave me with an empty heart. But I'll also show you how my answer didn't come with shouting, nor with hatred, because when the silence is real, it becomes justice. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. 3 days after seeing my account zeroed out, with every penny of what I saved in a lifetime evaporated, I received a call from Rome. It was Aaron. His voice trembled, he cried, and he said, "Mother, what did you do?" That's that. He thought I was going to accept it quietly, that I was going to die of heartbreak without doing anything. But I had already moved, and what I did, even today it surprises even me. It was there that he discovered that this old woman with the slow steps and downcast eyes also knew how to be dangerous, at the right time, in the right way. I only ask one thing before moving on. If this story has ever touched your heart in any way, if it reminded you of someone, or if it made you think about your own story, leave a like and subscribe here. It's not out of vanity. It's because this channel has been a shelter for many women who have felt what I felt. When you press that button, you show me that I'm not alone, and that others aren't either. Now yes, let me tell you how it all started. Most of my days, everything started the same way. The alarm clock was no longer necessary. My body woke up alone at 5:45 a.m. I took my kettle, boiled that water that I already knew the right point of my chamomile tea, and sat on the porch with my blue blanket on my legs. The street was still dark, the sun beginning to paint the buildings with that golden tone that only appears for about 10 minutes. It was the quietest moment of the day, and for me, the most beautiful. I've lived for 42 years in the same house in South Central, the one with the little red bricks and the white picket fence that Aaron helped me paint when I was 12. At that time, he still ran to hug me when I came back from work. I remember it as if it were yesterday. Now the only thing that runs in that house is me trying to keep the memories alive and the accounts in order. My garden is small, but it is my pride. The rose bushes that I planted with the help of my husband, before he fell from that scaffold and never returned, are still blooming. That's what I talk to sometimes. I say I'm tired, that time is passing quickly, that Aaron didn't call again this week. Neighbor Brenda, who lives in the front house, keeps saying, "Martha, you have the most beautiful heart I know, but this boy doesn't deserve even a third of him." I never respond angrily. Deep down, I still believed that he could change, that one day he would call me just to say, "Hi, Mom." I never asked for a gift. I just wanted to hear his voice without asking for something. In fact, it was always like this. When the phone rang, my heart was already preparing to hear, "Mom, can you help me with a little something?" I always could. I have always helped. With money, with food, with advice. When he and Tanya got married, I gave him $2,000 that were saved to repair the roof of my house. When his car broke down, I borrowed more. He never paid me, but you know, I never asked for it back. At Christmas last year, I waited for him to show up until midnight. He had made sweet potato pie, turkey, everything he liked. I stood at the window with my apron still tied. At 0:13 a.m., I received a message. "Sorry, Mom. We ended up going to your mother-in-law's house. I'll leave it for another day." To this day, that another day has not arrived. Still, I kept everything in order. I retired after 36 years of working as a maid in Hancock Park. I saw everything in that rich neighborhood. Women who cheated on their husbands with the gardener, children who despised their parents, people who had everything and didn't value anything. I cleaned those marble floors thinking, one day my son will recognize what I did for him. But what I didn't know is that while I was cleaning other people's floors, Someone was digging mine, and his name was the same one I carried in my body for 9 months. Aaron. My days after retirement were calm, too calm. I organized the old papers, read old letters, knitted 3 blankets in the last few months. Sometimes I felt like I was expecting something. I didn't know what. Maybe a sign, maybe a last hug. One day, trying to call him, he went straight to voicemail. I waited 2 hours and sent a message. I just wanted to know if you're okay. A kiss. He replied 2 days later with a heart emoji, and it was there that I felt something strange for the first time. Because a mother who carries years of silence in her chest also carries a kind of presentiment that does not make mistakes. It was as if my body was saying, "Open your eye, Martha," and I opened it. You know, there are times when we stop everything and think, was I too good? Could it be that I annulled myself so much out of love that I forgot myself? If you've ever felt this, if this doubt has ever crossed your chest, write here in the comments, "I've lived it," or else, "touched me," because I know I'm not the only one. And perhaps, reading what you are going to write, other women will also feel less alone. But at that time, I still didn't know what was coming. I still thought he was just busy, stressed, dealing with his problems. I had no idea that my son had already started messing with my savings account. The account I opened when he was still wearing a diaper, to save every tip change, overtime, cleaning done on Sunday. The account where I dreamed of one day using to travel to Chicago and see my sister, or maybe put a new floor in the kitchen. The account that represented my entire life, and that soon, very soon, it would be empty. Do you want to know how I found out? And what happened when I realized the size of the betrayal? So listen to me carefully, because what came after was not only pain, it was the beginning of my silent revenge. Things started to change in a way that only those who are mothers feel. It wasn't with fighting, nor with screaming. It was a strange silence, a different weight in the calls, in the cut words, in the hasty answers. Aaron started calling me more than usual, but he wasn't supposed to know about me. No, it was to ask for a favor. First, it was a bank paper that he needed me to sign to speed up insurance, according to him. He said it was a simple thing, a routine thing, and I, as I always did, signed. After all, he was my son, the same boy I held in my arms when I fell off the swing, who I took to the emergency by bus with a bleeding knee because I didn't have a car. He would never ask me for something that would hurt me, right? But something in that haste of his made me suspicious. He didn't want to explain it properly. He changed the subject as soon as I asked about work. "I'm busy, Mom. A lot of stress." And when I asked about Tanya, he just said, "She's fine." He sent a kiss. But he didn't. No. It had been almost a year since I heard her voice. When I called, it fell into voicemail. And if by a miracle she answered, she would say in that dry voice of hers, "Sorry, Martha, we're very busy. Modern life is crazy, you know." No, I didn't know what it was like. My life has never been modern. It was tough. It was simple, but never crazy. There was always time for those I loved. But for them, I had become a discreet burden, a name in the agenda, a call to avoid. Even Brenda noticed. She came here one day with a corn cake and said, "You're quieter, Martha. I've known you for over 30 years. What's going on?" And I just shook my head. Nothing, just tiredness. But it was a lie. What I felt was not tiredness. It was a warning, a strange tightness in the chest, as if something was out of place but still hidden. That life insurance paper kept hammering in my head for days. I tried to call Aaron to ask for more explanations, but he didn't answer. She sent a message, "We'll talk later, Mom." And that conversation never came. At night, I woke up with my heart racing. It wasn't a dream. It was a sensation, as if someone had been tampering with what was mine without permission. I started to look at my statements more closely, but at that time, I had not yet realized anything concrete. Only the emptiness growing, and this emptiness spoke. The worst part is that I still tried to justify it. He must be in crisis. New wedding, difficult work. It's their generation. Everything is so rushed. But a part of me, the oldest, most wounded and wisest part, already knew. My mother's heart had seen too many lies in life. I had already swallowed pride for love, and now he warned me. "There's something wrong, Martha. You'll find out, but maybe it's not ready to endure what's coming." Because what I found when I really opened my eyes, no one deserves to go alone. Want to know what it was? So get ready, because the scam they gave me started long before the money disappeared. It was an ordinary Monday. I woke up early, as always. The light was coming through the thin curtain of the kitchen, and I had already separated the money from gas, electricity, water. I went to the old computer in the corner of the room and tried to pay the bill for Southern California Edison. At first, I thought it was a problem on the site. I tried one more time, and another, until a message appeared saying, "Unauthorized payment. Check your balance." I thought it was strange. He knew exactly how much he had. That money was counted. Careful as if it were my own blood, I went straight to the bank's website. I entered my login, waited for it to load, and then the number appeared. 0. ZERO. My savings account, the one where I had kept everything I had saved in 40 years of work, was empty. My heart beat so hard that I had to sit down. I didn't cry. I just stood there, looking at the screen, trying to understand. I called the bank. A boy with a boy's voice answered. "Ms. Langston, all funds have been transferred to an account linked to Aaron Langston's name." He also asked, too politely, "Do you want to register it as fraud?" I couldn't answer. The hand trembled, the mouth dry. I just thanked him and hung up. I stood there, motionless, as if my body was separate from my soul. It seemed that I was out of my mind, seeing another woman sitting in that room, a woman who was deceived, that she was betrayed, and that now she was completely alone. A short time later, the phone rang. It was Brenda. "Martha, did you see Aaron's Instagram?" I didn't even know he wore that. "They're in Italy. Rome. Everyone's commenting, girl." I took out my cell phone. I opened his profile, which I barely looked at, and there it was. Him, Tanya, and her mother, toasting with glasses of red wine on a luxurious balcony overlooking the Colosseum. His caption read, "Rome, our new phase. I deserve it." But it was her caption that tore me apart. "Thank you for everything, mother-in-law. This money is saving us. My world didn't fall. He was ripped from me." Each letter of that sentence cut me more than a knife. Mother-in-law, the same one who never invited me to dinner, who said that her house was too small for visits. Now I was in Rome, drinking wine with my money. I closed the phone slowly. I sat for more than an hour, looking at the floor. No sound, no tears. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain was too great to leave. At that moment, it wasn't the empty account that destroyed me. That's what it meant. It was as if all the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the Christmases alone, the dinners I refused to pay for school, everything had been spat back in my face. I gave him my life, and he gave me contempt, not as a fight, but with a toast in Italy, with a fake smile in a digital photo. And you know what's worse? I still loved him. But in that instant, something inside me died. The last emotional bond that bound me to Aaron broke. Only silence remained. And it was in this silence that something began to be born. Because an injured woman can suffer, but a woman wounded in silence, it can turn into a storm. And I promise, what came after that photo was not revenge. It was justice. But do you know what a mother is capable of doing when she finds out that she has been used to the last penny? If you don't know, so listen to what's coming now, because that's where the story starts to turn. After I turned off my phone that day and saw that image of them smiling in Rome, something in me went out. I sat in the same place for a while, with the cold tea on the table, staring at nothing. The clock on the wall read 11:12 in the morning, but for me, time stopped. I don't know how long I was there, but I do know that at some point the past began to come slowly. First, as a loose souvenir, then, like an avalanche. I saw in my mind the day I sold my wedding ring. We were already tight. Aaron needed to buy the books for the second semester of college. I didn't want him to be embarrassed asking colleagues for photocopies. I sold the ring and never told him. He said he had lost it on a bus. To this day he doesn't know. Or maybe he knows, but he never asked. I remembered the day I stood outside his building, when he was still living in a rented apartment in Pasadena with Tanya. I arrived by surprise, with a warm corn cake and an embroidered dishcloth. I waited more than 2 hours in the lobby until the doorman, awkwardly, told me that I couldn't go up without being announced. I smiled and said it was okay, but inside it was like being pushed out of my son's life. And other memories came. Many. Cleaning Beverly Hills mansions, washing marble stairs while he slept in classrooms paid for with my sweat. The night I didn't have dinner to make milk for him. The 9th birthday, he ordered an ice cream cake and I had no money, so I came up with a treasure hunt game to distract him. Every detail of my struggle came to light, as if my heart wanted to remind me, you are not weak. You were just too good. The doorbell rang in the late afternoon. It was Brenda, my neighbor. It came with an apple pie and worried eyes. He sat with me in the kitchen and looked at me for a while before speaking. You've always been strong, Martha. I looked at her, with a calmness that even scared me, and replied, It's not strength, Brenda. It's customary. She held my hand and said nothing more, and it was better that way, because there is pain that is not talked about. There is pain that can only be held with the hand of someone who respects silence. That night, I didn't cry, but I did. I took my red notebook, the one I used to write down bills, recipes, and little reminders. On the first blank page, I wrote, Today my son killed me in silence, but tomorrow, I'll be back. I didn't know how I was going to react, or what I was going to do, but one thing I knew, I wasn't going to die like that. No, I'm here, with an open soul, telling you all this. Each of these lines came with a piece of my chest. So, if you're there listening to me, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. It's not just for me. It's for all the women who have been through something like this. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you, because when a mother is hurt like that, she either sinks or it rises with a force the world has never seen. And do you want to know how I started to turn the game around, even without leaving my house? So hold on tight, because in the next part, you will know the name of the one who helped me open my eyes, and it wasn't anyone in my family. It was on a cloudy Wednesday that I decided to leave the house with that brown envelope full of old papers. I hadn't been to the center for months, but that day, something inside me pushed me. I took the subway to Jefferson, walked to a little wooden door with peeling paint, where Walter Jenkins lived, an old friend from the time of the church, a widower like me, a retired lawyer, a man of few words, but with his eyes always attentive. He opened the door and looked at me for a few seconds before saying, You look different, Martha. Did something happen? I just held out the envelope. He made me come in, prepared black coffee without sugar, and we went to the kitchen table. I spent hours there with him, organizing the statements, the copies, everything I had kept over the years. With Brenda's help, I was able to print out my account history. She did it from her phone, because I didn't even know where to start, and that's how we saw it. The withdrawals began months before the trip. Small withdrawals at first, then big transfers until everything disappeared. But it was not only that. Walter pointed to a piece of paper with his finger. This signature here is not yours. I took a closer look. It was my name, but with a crooked L, as Aaron wrote when he was little, an L I would never make. He took a deep breath and said, Martha, this is a forgery. He put you as a co-signer of a joint account without your consent, and then cleaned it up. I felt the world spin, but I held on tight to the edge of the table. I wasn't going to faint, not after all. Over the next few days, I began to search the entire house. I was looking for, I didn't know what, but I knew I had to find something, and I found it. Behind the broom cabinet, inside an old folder where I kept water bills, there was a crumpled envelope. When I opened it, I almost dropped it. It was a draft of a will, a fake, badly written document with my name at the top. It said that I, Martha Langston, left the house, my only home, my floor, my roof, entirely to my son Aaron Langston, to the exclusion of any other heir or dispute. The signature was again a cheap imitation of mine, and the address of the witness? It was his mother-in-law's, that Rhonda. I sat on the floor right there. The cold of the tile went up my legs, but I didn't even feel it. They had not only stolen me, they were preparing to bury me alive. They wanted me to die on paper before the body stopped breathing. It was on that day that the Martha from before died, the one who apologized for existing, the one who accepted emotional crumbs thinking it was affection, the one who was waiting for a call at Christmas. That Martha, it's over, the one who sat there, holding that false will in her hands, was another, colder, more lucid, with a fire inside that didn't burn with anger. It burned with certainty. I didn't go to Aaron. I didn't call. I didn't send a message. Silence was my new weapon, and I knew that now my every step had to be calculated, because if they were able to erase me behind the scenes, I needed to reappear on the stage of their lives in a way they would never forget. But how do you build justice without shouting? How do you prepare revenge without raising your voice? I found the answer. and she started with a note in my purse pocket. Do you believe in coincidence or at destination? So wait and see what I found out that next day. Because fate, he was finally by my side. That Friday, the phone rang right after lunch. It was from the county clinic. The girl at the reception had a sweet voice, trained to give bad news softly. He asked me to write down the doctor's name and attend at 2:45 p.m. I already knew. It didn't need confirmation. I had been feeling strange for weeks. Tiredness for no reason. Dizziness that came and went like a tide. Dark spots on my arms. But, as always, I left it for later. Because a woman who spends her life taking care of others learns early to ignore the signals of her own body. I entered the office punctually. Dr. Sanders was a young man, very polite, one of those who look you in the eye. He wore a light blue tie and seemed to be more nervous than I was. He showed the exams, pointed out the levels, explained the terms. Leukemia, advanced stage. The words danced in front of me like smoke. He said that chemotherapy was urgent, but that time, it was short. I took a deep breath, adjusted the bag on my lap, looked at him firmly and said, "Then I'd better finish what I started." He frowned, confused. I smiled slightly, thanked him, and left. On the street, the sun was strong. I crossed the sidewalk with firm steps, as if nothing had changed. I passed by the hardware store where Aaron bought his first wheeled backpack. I saw the newsstand where he asked for dinosaur magazines, and every corner of those streets told a part of my life, the life that now had a deadline. I stopped at the bakery around the corner. I bought a sweet bread roll and a bottle of milk, as I had done for 20 years. The cashier gave me a smile. "Today there is a promotion, Mrs. Martha." I smiled back, my eyes moist, and said, "Then I'll take 2. I got home, left the bread on the table, took off my shoes, and went straight to my room. I grabbed my red notebook from the dresser drawer. I sat on the bed, opened to the last written page, and just below the sentence, "Today, my son killed me in silence," I wrote, "My son did not die, but the mother in me died. Now the woman is the one who acts." I closed the notebook slowly. The pain did not come in the form of crying. It was a mute tightness in the chest, a taste of iron in the mouth, the kind of pain that is already mixed with decision. There was no point in asking for an explanation anymore. There was no point in waiting for change anymore. If I only had a few months to go, then I was going to use them to get everything in order. My way. No, there is a moment in every woman's life when she stops waiting, and he begins to act. And if you're still here with me, listening to this story, I ask you, don't stop now. Because what's coming, it's the part that changes everything. That night, I slept little. I woke up every hour with images in my head. Aaron crying on my lap after the first disappointment in love. Me sewing his Halloween costume until 2 a.m. He smiling with crooked teeth saying, "You're my best friend, Mom." All of this now seemed as far away as Rome. But in the midst of the pain, clarity emerged. And one question didn't leave me alone. If I was able to create an entire life with so little, what could I still build with the few days I had left? I found the answer the next morning, inside a forgotten shoebox high up in the closet. And what was inside? He gave me the key to my plan. Do you want to know what it was? So hold on tight, because now, my justice begins. The box was at the top of the closet, hidden behind old winter coats that I hadn't worn in a long time. When I pulled, a little dust fell, and along with it, a wave of memories. It was a shoebox, one of those old ones, covered with faded gift paper. Inside there were receipts, letters, copies of documents, and a red plastic briefcase with a broken zipper. I sat on the bed, opened everything carefully, and there, in the midst of papers that many would call junk, I found the beginning of my strength. The old statements clearly showed the regular movements of my account over the years. Small deposits, controlled withdrawals, all done with caution. And then, suddenly, the values began to change. Transfers became frequent. The names appeared. Aaron Langston, joint account, card withdrawals, and all on dates that I remembered well. Birthdays, holidays, days when I was alone, believing that he was just too busy to visit me. I took the red notebook and wrote, April 12th. I started. The next day, I went to Brenda's house. She looked at me with those eyes that know how to read soul. You decided, right? I just shook my head. We sat in her kitchen with coffee and pie, and I told her everything. She didn't question it. He only asked, "What can I do?" Walter was next. When I opened the door of his house and he saw me with the briefcase in his arms, I already knew. He said he was going to call a colleague. He still had contacts. And that there was a program in the county to protect elderly victims of financial abuse. In less than a week, he helped me open an administrative process. He was discreet, without involving the police or court immediately, just to protect the assets until they understood the situation. With the documents in hand, we were able to freeze Aaron's accounts in the U.S. The lawyer who helped Walter did so based on the suspicious movement and the use of a potentially forged signature. I remember the feeling of relief that came when I received the email with the confirmation of the block. It was like breathing after days at rock bottom. We also went to the public registry office in Compton. I asked for a full review of my home registry. And there, another bomb. Aaron had tried to change the status of the property. He filled out a form requesting that the house be listed as a shared investment among family members. This, if approved, would give him the right to sell it. But he made a mistake. He put the wrong batch number. It was this mistake that saved me. A number. A single misplaced digit kept the ceiling over my head. I returned home with the paper in hand, and before entering, I stood in the garden, looking at my rose bushes. I remembered my husband, the bricks placed with effort, the day I hung the first curtain. That house was mine. Every bit, every crack, every achievement. Aaron tried to wrest that from me with a form, but God, or fate, did not let him. That night, I sat with Walter and Brenda in the living room. I showed everything, organized the papers, highlighted the dates, separated signatures, put everything together in a dossier. I didn't know how much time I had left to live, but what I knew how to do, organize. So I looked at the two of them and said firmly, "This is not revenge. It is justice, and I'm going to die only after it's done." You know, there are things that only those who have been betrayed by someone they raised in their arms understand. That pain that tears slowly, that keeps you awake at night, not out of fear, but out of incredulity. Because you ask yourself, was I stupid? Or was I too good in a world that doesn't deserve it? If you've ever felt that, comment below. He writes, "I understand you," or "It's true." Because sometimes, a simple phrase like this is all someone needs to know that they are not alone. But if you think Aaron was going to stop there, he was wrong. Because when his money started to disappear there in Rome, it was the first time he realized that something was wrong. And his reaction, it was exactly what I expected. Do you want to know what he did? Wait until you hear the call I received. The first of many. In Rome, what was wine and toast began to turn into silence and crooked looks. Aaron thought he was living in the pinnacle of freedom, but what he didn't know was that the ground beneath his feet was already cracking. Tanya, who until then had posted photos smiling next to him with glasses raised and false captions about gratitude, began to change. Suddenly, she was always having a headache, always with her back turned, always on her cell phone with the screen facing down. And Rhonda, the mother-in-law, who had once melted into flattery, now treated him with barely concealed contempt. Everything was a complaint. The hotel, the food, the weather, and especially his. One night, while Tanya was taking a shower, Aaron heard her voice on the speakerphone in the room. She thought he was sleeping, but he was on the terrace, and the open window let the conversation slip. "As soon as we get back, I'll solve it. He's an idiot, you know. It will be left for him." The laughter that came after chilled his blood. He entered slowly, disguising himself, and said nothing. But that morning, while she was sleeping, he unlocked her cell phone with his face, and what he found made his stomach turn. Messages with a friend, phrases like, "Let's disappear with the money," and worse, "He thought I was going to take care of him. Little does he know that I'll leave this asshole as soon as he sets foot in the USA." Aaron panicked. He woke Tanya up right away, demanded explanations, but she just laughed and left the room saying that she wasn't going to argue with a hysterical man. Rhonda said nothing. He only passed by it like someone passing by a hotel employee. And it was there that he realized there was no one on his side. He had no wife. He had no mother-in-law. He only had the weight of his own mistake. He ran to the computer, tried to access the account. The password didn't work. He tried the app on his cell phone. Blocked. He called the bank number. After waiting 10 minutes, someone answered. "Mr. Langston, we have identified disputed movements in your account. You will need to go to the American Embassy for clarification." He hung up and sat up on the bed with heavy breathing. For the first time in his life, he felt real fear. Not the childish fear of punishment or scolding. It was the adult fear of consequences. One of those that you can't erase with excuses. And deep down, he knew. He might have had no proof. He might not have heard my name out loud. But he knew. Only one person in the world would have the intelligence, the calmness, and the reason to dismantle everything without touching anything. I, the woman he underestimated. The mother he thought he could erase with a toast of expensive wine. And while it collapsed there on the other side of the ocean, I drank my coffee on the porch, looking at my garden, silent, attentive. What Aaron didn't already know, that was just the beginning, because I hadn't shown my strongest card yet. Want to know what it was? So pay attention, because what's next? It touches on past, present, and heritage, and there is no turning back. Walter came home with a black briefcase under his arm, the same one he wore in court days. It was late afternoon, and the Los Angeles sky was painted with that golden tone that only appears when the wind decides to respect the silence of the city. We sat on the porch. He opened the papers with the calm of someone who knows that paper can be a weapon. "Martha," he said, "you have something rare here. Proof, motive, and enough time to act. Not a long time, but enough." He began to explain each step patiently. Together, we filed formal complaints in 3 places: the Treasury Department, the IRS, and the County Elder Protection Center. Walter used an almost forgotten clause in the law, one that protects the elderly against heirs who abuse emotionally and financially, even before death happens. It was what they called the International Capital Block. That clause, when accepted, triggers an alert that accompanies the person under investigation in any suspicious international movement. Aaron's name has been included in internal lists, discrete restrictions that prevent transfers, applications, and unrestricted access to accounts, even abroad. But the most delicate part was with the consulate. I had to write a letter, not as a hurt mother, but as a citizen asking for protection. I told my story in detail, gathered the documents, the false signatures, the statement of the zeroed account. I asked that he be summoned to provide clarifications even before disembarking, as soon as he returned from the arms of Italy. Walter looked at me at the end of that day and said, "Now we have to wait. You did everything right. They don't expect it." I returned home with a new calm. I turned on the radio. Etta James was playing. Her voice filled the rooms as if she knew exactly where it hurt. I sat in the armchair, the blanket on my lap, and continued to sew as I have done for years. No one from the outside would say that a woman sewing by hand in a simple neighborhood of South LA was turning the tables on a scheme that involved international fraud, emotional abandonment, and a fortune that was not large, but was all I had. And perhaps because of that, I succeeded. Because they expected tears, despair. They expected me to be that mother who swallows everything, who forgives at the first apology. Only this time, no. I always thought that justice was a court thing. But sometimes justice is silence. It is firmness. It's you getting up from your chair and saying, "Not anymore. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward?" Like and subscribe here to the channel. This makes more difference than you think. And there's a lot of history still stored here, see? Because, while I was making my coffee as usual, Aaron received an email from the consulate, with a code, and a demand. Attend the embassy urgently for financial clarification on suspicion of international misconduct. He was in a hotel in Florence. He thought it was a mistake. Tanya laughed, saying it was paranoia. But he was no longer sure of anything. And do you know what he did? He called me, for the first time after all. But what he heard, he will never forget it. And neither do you. Just wait until I tell you. Aaron woke up to the morning light invading his hotel room in Rome. Tanya wasn't in bed. He thought he had gone down to have coffee. Waited. He waited longer. He called her cell phone. Out of area. Tried Rhonda. Turned off. He hurriedly dressed and went down to the hotel restaurant, his eyes sweeping every corner of the room. No sign of both. When he tried to swipe the card to pay for the coffee, the manager approached. "Mr. Langston, there was a problem with your account. We need full payment of the stay in advance." Aaron widened his eyes, pulled out his wallet, tried another card, refused. Everyone. He ran upstairs to the room. The suitcase was overturned. Inside, only a few wrinkled clothes, his toiletry bag and a pair of shoes. The rest, jewelry, cards, cash, Tanya's suitcase, perfumes, everything, are gone. He remained motionless for a few minutes, his breath short. He sat on the edge of the bed, opened the notebook, and on an impulse, read again the messages he had found days before on his wife's cell phone. But this time, he read it with different eyes. Phrases that once seemed just neglect, now had another color. As soon as the money falls, we'll solve it. The old woman's almost going. It's now or never. He's silly. He believes in everything. The mother raised it right. And further on, a message from Rhonda to Tanya. Make him sign, then leave it to me. He won't even feel it when we cut the rest. It was like being punched, one by one, slowly. The words screamed on the screen. Every laugh typed, every plan, every offense disguised as a joke. Aaron understood that he was never loved by them. He was their project, the bridge, the path to a better life at the expense of the mother he chose to forget. He tried to call friends in Los Angeles. No one answered. He sent messages. No one answered. It was as if the world around him had fallen silent, as if the doors that had always been open, thanks to his mother's name, were now locked. He took out his cell phone once again and entered my number. Waited. The call rang. Long. I saw the name on the screen and let it play. When I answered, his voice came almost in a whisper. Mom. I was silent. He cried. He asked for forgiveness. He said that Tanya and Rhonda were gone, that he was alone, that everything went wrong, that he didn't know what to do. And that's when I said for the first time in weeks, Aaron, I taught you to be an honest man. I cannot teach you now to be a whole man. This you will have to learn on your own. He tried to argue, to ask how I did all that. I just said, you underestimated the silence of someone who has seen the world through the eyes of pain. Turned off, not out of revenge, but out of respect. To my story, to my truth, to the woman I had become. And if you're still here listening to me, let me tell you something with an open heart. Sometimes, the strength we think we don't have, it's just hidden behind fear. And when the fear goes away, what is left is courage. That's why it stays with me until the end, because the strongest is yet to come. Aaron, that day, felt for the first time the taste of abandonment, and it was just the beginning, because his name was about to appear in a hearing. And who was going to speak? It was me. Can you imagine what I told you there? Well, get ready, because now, the truth was going to be told, word for word. In the cold room of the American Embassy in Rome, time seemed to stand still. The air conditioner was blowing an icy wind that hit my back, but my blood was hot. I held a yellow envelope, one of those big, thick paper ones. Inside, there was not only my defense, there was my story. They called me by my full name, Martha Louise Langston. I walked slowly to the table, not out of weakness, but by choice. My every step was a message. I arrived, sat calmly, and kept my gaze up. Aaron was already there. Rumpled clothes, unshaven, sunken eyes. He was no longer that smiling boy with short pants on the first day of school. He was a broken man, a man who has forgotten where he came from. I was asked to describe what led me to report my own son. I opened the envelope. I started with bank statements, dates, amounts, transfers. Then I showed the falsified authorization, the same one he used to remove me as a holder and put me as a dependent on my own account. I presented the forged will, with the signature that was not mine. And then I pulled out a folded sheet in the middle, an old photo. Aaron at 6 years old, eating birthday cake, his face smeared, and me behind him, holding the candle. I gave the photo to the officer. I raised this boy alone. I gave everything. I never asked for anything, just that he respected me. I pointed to the documents. He stole it from me, but what hurt the most, it was realizing that he no longer saw me as a mother. He saw me as an obstacle, a name in the registry office, a body that he hoped to see erased to sign a deed. Aaron was crying. He didn't try to interrupt, and he couldn't. The process was advanced. Tanya, who had appeared only out of curiosity or mockery, let out a short laugh when I showed her the fake signature. I looked at her, not angry, with pity. You took everything he had, but it never had what I gave. Love. Really. The one who gets up early to have a school lunch, waiting at the bus stop in the cold, who sells the ring to buy a book. She lowered her eyes, and it was there, in front of those white walls, those hard chairs, that they asked for Aaron's signature, the signature that officially ended any banking relationship between us. He hesitated. The pen trembled, but he signed it. And by signing, he also erased the last trace of a sun that was still under my roof. I took a deep breath, and when I got up to leave, I felt that something in me was also coming off. A tired part, which was still waiting for explanations. Not anymore. Now it was just silence. You know, there are memories that are engraved as if they were tattoos on the soul, and no matter how much time passes, they come back with smell, color, sound. This day at the embassy will stay with me until the end. The same way Aaron's first "I love you" turned out, the first fever, the first report card from school. We don't choose what stays, but he chooses what he does with it. Have you ever been through something like this? Or have you ever heard a similar story? If you have something stored there in your memory chest, share it here in the comments. Sometimes splitting helps clear the pain, because, you see, despite everything, this story is not over yet. Because, as I left the embassy, I received an envelope, a new one, and what was inside changed everything. Do you want to know what it was? So come with me, because now, fate is the one who speaks. It didn't take long. The day after the hearing, while I was having a bitter coffee at the counter of the small boarding house where I stayed, Walter arrived with his cell phone in his hand, his expression serious, and at the same time, surprised. "Have you seen that, Martha?" I shook my head. He turned the screen for me. There it was, a video, posted by an American tourist who watched the scene at the embassy with the headline, "The bravest mother I've ever seen." The recording began when I took the documents out of the envelope and showed the photos of Aaron as a child. The picture was a little shaky, but the sound was clear, and there, in front of thousands of strangers, my voice echoed, "You were my life, but I was never yours. Today I understand." I closed my eyes for a second. I took a deep breath. It was not vanity. It was astonishment. The internet. I never understood that very well, but at that moment it seemed that the world had stopped to listen to an injured mother. The next few hours were a whirlwind. Walter showed me the comments. Hundreds. Then, thousands. Warrior mother. That sounds like my story. Dignity does not age. People from Texas, North Carolina, New York. Even from Canada. People who have never seen me, never heard my name. But they seemed to understand exactly what I felt there. I started receiving messages. Brenda called me. "Martha, you're famous." I laughed. "Famous, Brenda? Me soon?" And she replied, "It's not fame. It's respect." Some recognized Aaron. A former college classmate commented, "I studied with him. We never knew what he did to his own mother." Another, from an old job, wrote, "So arrogant. Now I understand why." Gradually, the image of Aaron, who had always been impeccable, with a beautiful speech, a neat suit, began to unravel like paper in the rain. He became a familiar face for the wrong reasons. And in Rome, according to what I was told later, he began to walk like a ghost. No one else wanted to share coffee with him at the hotel. He was disinvited from a business event that he himself had scheduled. The last time anyone saw him, he was sitting alone on a bench in Piazza Navona, his gaze lost, as if looking for something that even he didn't know what it was. No, the greatest punishment is not imprisonment. It is the mirror, and his, now, showed everything he tried to hide. Sometimes justice comes like this, quietly, but with strength, like water, that looks weak, but carves stone. And the most curious? It's just that, even with all this happening, I went on with my life in the same way. I went back to the boarding house, made my tea, answered 1 or 2 messages, and sat down to finish my embroidery. Because deep down, I knew that was not yet the end. By the way, let me tell you something that may surprise you. The envelope I received when I left the embassy, it was not just a consular warning. It was something that no one expected. Something that changed everything again. Do you want to know what was inside? So don't get out of there. Because now, it's my time to turn the page. And the next one has a name that no one has forgotten. Returning to my home was like going through an invisible portal. On the outside, the world spoke my name, shared my story, called me strong. Inside, everything remained the same. The threadbare linen curtains, the armchair with the arm loose, the old radio on the kitchen counter. I went in, closed the door calmly, and took off my shoes. Feeling the wooden floor underfoot reminded me of how many times that floor received my tired steps, coming from crowded buses, after cleaning houses that were not mine, lives that were not mine. Outside, Brenda came to give me a tight hug, brought flowers, and said, "You've turned the heart of America, Martha." I smiled, thanked him, but didn't comment, because I knew I hadn't won out. I had one inside. The fever came that same night. It wasn't strong, but it left my body soft, as if every part of me asked me to stop. I understood. Time was closing, but the pain was no longer here. She had left with Aaron's signature, with the video that went around the world, with the silence that I wrote myself, with the tip of my dignity. That morning, I picked up my red notebook. I opened to the last page. I took a deep breath, and I began to write with the lyrics that time could not erase. "My son, if one day this letter reaches your hands, it is a sign that my body is no longer here. But make no mistake, I'm still alive, in every choice you make. Do not look for me among my objects. Don't pick me up at the house. I will be in your acts of kindness, if you have the courage to do any. I didn't leave you for revenge. I left you out of respect, to what I went, to what I tried to be for you. If you ever feel regret, use it not to punish yourself, but to transform yourself. I was his mother until the last second, and that doesn't change. With silence, Martha." I closed the notebook. I took an envelope. I wrote by hand, to Aaron. I opened the wooden box where I keep the old photos, those in black and white, his drawings as a child, the first baby tooth that fell out. I put the letter there, closed. Then I went to the kitchen, made some chamomile tea, and sat on the porch. The night was cool. The radio played an old song that my husband liked. "A change is going to come." It was as if he was standing there telling me, "You did what was right, Martha. Now rest." And it was there, under that sky, with the lights of the streetlights reflecting on the glass of the window, that I felt, for the first time in a long time, a peace that needed no words. But little did I know that that letter would not be kept for long, because someone I didn't expect, was going to find her before the end. Can you imagine who it was? Well, prepare your heart, because fate, when it decides to act, he does not ask for permission. It was on a Sunday with blue skies, one of those when the wind passes slowly through the trees and the sun sneaks in through the window. The city was silent, as if it already knew. I had woken up early, as always. I put on my favorite dress, the blue one with little flowers, and made some weak tea, and sat in my rocking chair. I took the blanket I had been knitting for weeks and got involved with it. The red notebook was on his lap, the letter on the side. I took a deep breath, looked up at the sky, and closed my eyes. There my presence ended, but not my story. It was the neighbor across the street, Sarah, who saw me there, hours later, still in the chair. He thought I was sleeping. When she noticed the silence too long, she called Brenda, and she was the one who came close, who touched my cold arm with the care of someone who touches a memory. Brenda didn't cry there. She just said she was the way she lived, without making noise. Walter came soon after. He found the envelope with my name, the instructions I left, the documents organized. They knew what to do. I had everything ready. No open coffin, no bought-on flowers. I asked for flowers from my garden, daisies, lavenders, and some roses that had weathered the winter. I asked the children of the neighborhood to draw pictures and leave them next to the portrait I took when I turned 60, with my hair already gray and my smile serene. Brenda organized everything with care. In the backyard of my house, they set up a simple table with a white tablecloth. Walter read some words I wrote years ago on one of my birthdays. "If I leave without noise, don't think I've suffered. Think that I rested in time, as if I lay in a field of good memories. No one wore black. I had made it clear. I don't want to mourn. I want presents. I want them to know that I went all the way up." The children drew hearts, angels, stars. A girl named Zoe wrote in a note, "Martha was magical. She always knew when I was sad." Neighbors came that I didn't even imagine remembered me. A gentleman who delivered the newspaper said that I always smiled with my eyes. A girl who sold bread on the corner said that I never stopped saying good morning, even on days when I could barely walk. And there was Walter, firm, and Brenda, holding the emotion like someone holding a teacup filled to the brim, carefully, so as not to spill. I became what I never dreamed of, a local legend, Not one of those with exaggeration, but the kind that people tell in the late afternoon, when the sun is going down. Do you remember Martha? They will say. The old woman who was stolen by her own son, and that even so it came out on top. That woman, it was made of iron and faith. And there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. Because sometimes all you need is to hear that there's still time to get up, even after the deepest fall. But don't think that it all ended here. Because the red notebook, he was not buried with me. He stayed, and what happened to him will still amaze you. Because a story only ends when the last page is turned. And this, I still had a name to call. When Aaron returned to Los Angeles, he was no longer the same man who left carrying expensive suitcases and empty promises. He got off the plane with an old backpack on his back, a rumpled coat, and a look that seemed to no longer fit inside him. Customs held him for long minutes, asked questions, checked documents. No arrest, just the weight of embarrassment, the kind of weight that marks more than handcuffs. Outside, the dry California air hit his face as a warning. Everything you ran away has waited for you quietly. He walked aimlessly, up and down sidewalks that he once knew like the back of his hand. He passed by the old snack bar where I bought donuts for him on Sundays. The owner, an Indian gentleman, looked at him with a mixture of surprise and pity. "You're gone, kid." His mother always came. Aaron lowered his eyes. He bought 6 donuts, the ones I liked the most. 2 chocolate, 2 blueberry, 2 cinnamon. Then he bought flowers, plain daisies, because he knew I preferred modest ones, and walked to my house in South Central. When he arrived, he stopped on the sidewalk. The window was open, the curtains swaying in the wind. He recognized that movement. "How many times have you seen me straighten that curtain? How many times did you complain about it, saying that my taste was too old?" He stood there for long minutes. Sometimes I looked at the door, sometimes to the ground. He didn't have the courage to hit. He couldn't say my name. He just left the envelope on the step, with the flowers and donuts. The envelope had a short letter. "Mom, I'm back. I just wanted to see you." That afternoon, Brenda saw him from afar through the window. He wanted to open the door, but he didn't. She knew that some stories need silence to end, and some guilt needs to be felt until the last echo. The next day, Aaron returned. It didn't hit. He just left another letter. And the next day, and the next. He started to always go at the same time, 4:17 p.m. It was the time when, as a child, I picked him up from school. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe it was memory. Maybe it was guilt calling for the clock. One day, he arrived and saw the red notebook in the window, left there by Brenda as part of the memories of the wake. He didn't have the courage to play. He just stared, and he cried. He cried not as a man, but as a child. That boy who one day held my finger at the bus stop, the one who slept leaning on my shoulder. And you know, there is a phrase that comes back to us when life decides to teach slowly. Sometimes the deepest pain is the one that comes too late to ask for forgiveness from those who can no longer hear. If you're still with me, keep it in your heart, because the story that I lived, and that you are hearing now, is not about money. It's about time, the time that does not come back. Aaron spent weeks coming back. He would go into the empty yard, sit on the step where I was drinking tea, and talk to himself. He told things from his childhood. He said he was afraid, that I missed it, who never thought I could disappear before he learned to be a man. The neighborhood saw it. No one scoffed. It was strange, but also sad. A broken man trying to pick up pieces that no longer fit. He lost everything. The wife, the mother-in-law, friends, the money, the name cleared. All that was left was what had always been there, but that he never knew how to look at, the emptiness inside him. And in that void, for the first time, he found enough silence to feel, and feeling it hurts. But even so, something still needed to happen. Something he didn't expect. Something that was not in the letters he left or in the steps he repeated at my door. Because one day, when he came back, there was someone waiting for him. And this person carried a truth that was going to turn his life upside down. Do you want to know who it was? So take a deep breath, because what comes now changes everything. As the weeks passed, something began to change in my neighborhood. It didn't happen with noise or with announcements, but with small gestures that appeared like flowers after the rain. The children, who previously only saw me as the lady of the rose bushes, began to create stories about me. They said that I had traveled to teach lessons to the ungrateful, as if I had gone to another world to teach those who forget their own mother. Others, more fanciful, said that my red notebook had powers, that if someone wrote a secret in there, the secret would be cured, or revealed itself. They laughed, but there was respect in those laughs. It was the kind of respect that is only born when a person becomes a legend unintentionally. Brenda has become the guardian of my memory. She, who had always cared for me more than I admitted, now taught basic finance at the local school, using my story as an example of strength and alertness. She wasn't a witch, Brenda told the girls. She was a mother, and that's what killed her. But that's also what saved her. The children listened with big eyes, as if they were in front of a sad but true fairy tale. With the support of Walter and a few neighbors, my home was left open to a small group of elderly women. Women who, like me, carried heavy stories in their bones. Stories of abandonment, of ungrateful children, of omissive husbands, of broken families with subtleties. They met every Wednesday, in the room that used to store my radio and my knitting. There, they drank tea, leafed through donated books, and wrote letters that would never be sent. Letters to distant children, for parents who have already died, for loves that would not come back. And somehow, as they wrote, it was as if I was sitting there in the armchair, with the red notebook on my lap, listening to every word without interrupting. Because every wounded woman needs, first and foremost, to be heard. Brenda hung a photograph of me on the wall, the one from her 60th birthday. The frame was simple, but the meaning was great. The caption, written in her handwriting, read, "We are born a daughter, but a woman ages." And that was it. There, in that small space, full of low voice and big soul, I existed, not as a martyr, not as a victim, but like someone who opened a door for others to open their own window. Sometimes the children of the neighborhood would come in and ask, "Does Martha come back?" And Brenda would reply, "She's here. Look around." They looked and, for a moment, seemed to believe that I could appear around the corner, with my flowered dress and my discreet smile, asking for silence to listen to the radio. And you know, there is a curious thing about memory. It has the power to make us live in people we've never seen before. My story passed by word of mouth. It became a warning. It became strength. It became consolation. Not a story of revenge, but of dignity. The women of the club began calling the place Martha's house. And there, they healed, in silence, like me. But as my name grew like a light wind in the community, there was one last piece of this puzzle that still needed to be placed. And she wasn't with Brenda, or with Walter, or with the women who gathered in my room. It was in the hands of someone who was still struggling with his own conscience. Because one day, this someone entered that house. And what did you find inside? Everything changed. Do you want to know what he saw? So get ready, because the next part, it is where the truth chooses to appear. The rain of that day seemed to fall only on him, as if the sky had chosen to follow in his footsteps. Aaron walked slowly down the wet sidewalk of South Central, his coat soaked and his head down, until he reached the house where I'd lived almost my entire life. Walter had asked to meet him there. He didn't explain anything. He just said, "It's time for you to see what you need to see." Aaron entered slowly, as if stepping into a sacred and forbidden place at the same time. The room was organized the way I always left it. The old radio on the sideboard, the folded blanket on the couch, the light smell of lavender that Brenda sprayed once a week. But there was a wooden box on the table, the same one that held my most important photos and papers. Walter was waiting for him sitting in the rocking chair. Without saying a word, he pointed to the box. Aaron opened it with hesitant hands. Inside was a white envelope, with my trembling but firm handwriting. To Aaron. He took a deep breath before opening it, as if he knew that leaf would change everything he believed he understood about me, and about himself. The letter was written in my old handwriting, the one I used when I wrote notes to put in his lunchbox. And it said like this: "Son, I forgave you long before you hurt me. I forgave you when you turned your face, when you didn't call me at Christmas, when you left me waiting at the door of your building. I forgave you even when you forgot my favorite food and remembered everyone's preferences except mine. But understand one thing, Love without limits becomes prison, and my love died to set you free. I don't want you to live carrying the guilt of having lost me. I want you to live carrying the courage to be better than it was with me. If one day you are able to love someone like I loved you, without expecting anything, without measuring returns, without negotiating affection, then you will understand. And only then will you really know me." Aaron stopped reading. He pressed the letter to his chest, as if it burned. His breathing became short, and his eyes red. Walter observed in silence, as if knowing that certain truths do not need witnesses, only space to hurt. There, in that small room, he felt something he had never felt before. It wasn't nostalgia. It was not a foul. It was not simple pain. It was true repentance, the one that first corrodes inside before turning into any chance of redemption. He sat on the couch, where so many times I sat waiting for a call that never came. The rain was beating down on the window, and the noise seemed to mark the rhythm of his memories. He remembered when I sold my ring to pay for his prep school. He remembered the lunchboxes I took him to study until late. She remembered the time he told me, "Mom, one day I'll give you a better house," and how he never touched the subject again. The letter trembled in his hand, but not as much as the consciousness that finally woke up. And it was at that moment, with his head bowed and his soul open, that he saw something he had not noticed. At the bottom of the box, just below the letter, there was a photograph. It was him small, about 4 years old, hugging me in the kitchen, with flour on his face. On the back, handwritten, in blue ink, "I still believe in you, son." He collapsed, and Walter, with a heavy heart, put his hand on his shoulder, not as a lawyer, not as a family friend, but as a man who knew how to recognize when another man finally collapsed from his own arrogance. That letter, that photo, that silence, all that opened a door inside him, a door he avoided for years. And now, in front of what was left of me, he realized that he could no longer lock her up again. But the most curious thing is that, when a son finally sees his mother, his world changes axis, and Aaron didn't know it yet, but there was something else waiting for him. Something I left, not out of anger, but for love. One last piece of my story that he still had to face. And it is now that I ask you, do you want to know what he found after that? Because what comes in the last part, it is what transforms everything. I know that, looking from the outside, many people think that my story ends in that letter, there on the table, when my son finally understood the weight of what he had done. But the truth is that the end, it's never just the end. After Aaron read my words, he stood in that house, as if he were stepping on the last piece of me that was left in the world. He didn't move the furniture. He didn't paint the walls. He didn't take my books out of place. I slept on the couch where I used to doze off after listening to the blues, as if I wanted to feel the mark of my body there. He opened my red notebook, the one that kept my lists, my recipes, my secrets, and started copying the recipes to learn how to make them the way I did. First it burned everything, of course. Then he got it right. Gradually the kitchen smelled of life again. And maybe I wasn't there anymore, but the house breathed again. Aaron began helping the neighborhood children with their homework, walking to the community center, carrying boxes, cleaning benches, offering coffee to those who arrived tired. Not to show anything to anyone, not to pay a debt to me, but because for the first time, he understood that rebuilding isn't about asking for forgiveness. It's about deserving it. Brenda used to tell her neighbors, "He's trying to fit in an entire mother." And I think that was it. He was trying to become an adult for the first time, and not a big man with a small heart. Walter would pass by from time to time and say that the house seemed lighter, and so time went by, without haste. The truth is that I left, but I didn't leave. I stayed in every gesture he tried to get right, in every mistake he had the courage to admit, in every silence he finally learned to hear. And today, looking at everything from where I am, this part you call what you want, memory, longing, memory that lives, I know that the justice I sought was not to destroy my son. It was to wake him up, and waking up someone who has slept their whole life. Sometimes it requires sacrifices that only a mother knows how to make. In the end, the lesson that remains is simple, but it is not easy. Too much love, when it has no limit, becomes a handcuff. Too much forgiveness, when there is no border, becomes an invitation to be hurt. and too much silence. Ah, the silence. He can both save and kill. But when we learn to put it in the right place, it becomes a lighthouse. Life taught me late, but it taught me beautifully. Sometimes we only win when we stop waiting and start to exist by ourselves. And time is so wise, folks. Nothing is hidden from him. Nothing. And before I say goodbye to this story that I told you with so much truth, let me thank you. The way my heart would if it still had a voice. Thank you for walking with me here, for holding my hand even without knowing me. If this video touched you in any way, give me a hug in the form of a like. It warms up this little corner and helps other people find this story. And if you want to come back for a next coffee with me, subscribe to the channel. Here, every story has a lap. Every word has ground. Also, tell me in the comments which city you listen to me. It's so beautiful to see where these voices come from that join my wrinkles and my silences. And it activates the bell, see? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Now, don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.